Morocco has a long history and a culture that has absorbed millennia of customs. It bears the stamp of multiple historical civilizations, resulting in a breathtaking diversity and complexity that can still be observed in the streets of its cities and among its people. Morocco is a North African country with a population of approximately 32 million people. The population is increasing at a pace of 1.067%. The population of Morocco is made up of Berbers, Sunni Muslims of Arab ancestry, and Arab Berbers. Morocco has a population density of 72 persons per square meter. There are 3 ethnic groups in the country. The Arab-Berber ethnic group makes up 99.1% of the total population, followed by a group that includes people who aren't Arab-Berber and Jews, which makes up 0.7%, and Jews, who make up 0.2%. The country features a diverse religious landscape, with Islam accounting for 99% of the population, Christianity accounting for 1%, and Jews accounting for roughly 6,000 individuals. Moroccans speak Arabic as their official language. In government, business, and diplomacy, French and Berber dialects are frequently utilized. In this moderate Muslim country, ethnic groups tolerate one another. Morocco is a key contributor to African economic affairs and one of the continent's most prosperous nations. Some of the country's food is grown for local consumption. However, due to the semi-arid climate, agriculture is unreliable, and the country must rely on food imports. Moroccan cuisine is the Mediterranean, consisting primarily of fruits, grains, and vegetables. Animal foods are not commonly consumed. Because of westernization, Moroccan urbanites have switched their eating habits from organic foods to fast foods, resulting in a diet high in sugar and fats. As a result, obesity is common in metropolitan settings. Moroccan housing is quite good, with 83% of the population living in cities and 69% in upgraded areas with safe drinking water and adequate sanitation. There are numerous tourist attractions throughout the country. The country also boasts a diverse cultural heritage and arts. Cities like Casablanca, Marrakech, and Fes are popular tourist destinations due to their magnificent beaches, hotels, bazaars, and medinas, among other things. Asila, a historic site with beautiful decorations created by Moroccan artists, is another draw. Ornate ceramics, lovely mosaics, and elaborately woven carpets are all readily available for purchase. Morocco's economy, like that of many other former African colonies, is primarily reliant on raw resource exports. Modern sectors, particularly tourism and telecommunications, are becoming increasingly important to the economy. Despite employing only around 1/3 of the country's workers, the contemporary component accounts for more than 2/3 of gross domestic product. Morocco has a GDP of over $112 billion. The Moroccan government has been pursuing robust privatization and economic reform agenda since the mid-1980s, aided by major international lenders such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Selling state-owned firms, weakening the currency, and modifying pricing rules have all been implemented to boost local production. The Moroccan government established a lending fund in 1999 to encourage small business growth and competition. Morocco's sandy beaches, sunshine, various ecosystems, and rich cultural past provide it with exceptional tourist potential, which the government has been working hard to cultivate. Agriculture contributes almost 15% to Morocco's GDP, and combined with the fishing and forestry sectors, employs about 4 to 5% of Morocco's workforce. Morocco is rich in resources that can be exploited. Morocco's agricultural potential is unmatched by a few other Arab or African countries, with roughly 85,000 square kilometers of fertile land, 1/7 of which may be irrigated, and a usually mild Mediterranean climate. It is one of the few Arab countries with the capability of achieving food self-sufficiency. In a typical year, Morocco produces 2/3 of the grains required for domestic consumption, primarily wheat, barley, and corn. The country sends citrus fruits and early vegetables to Europe. Its wine industry is thriving, and commercial crops such as cotton, sugarcane, sugar beets, and sunflowers are growing in popularity. Tea, tobacco, and soybeans are among the newer crops that have survived the experimental stage, thanks to the fertile Gharb Plains' favorable growing conditions. The country is working hard to increase its irrigation capacity, which will eventually irrigate about 2.5 million acres. Despite this, the threat of drought is always present. The cereal-growing lowlands, which experience significant yearly precipitation variance, are particularly vulnerable. Drought occurs every third year on average in Morocco, causing agricultural production to fluctuate, which is the biggest barrier to the sector's progress. Raising livestock, particularly sheep and cattle, is common. Morocco produces its own meat and strives to become self-sufficient in dairy goods. Morocco's woods, which represent about a tenth of the country's total land area, are extremely valuable commercially. Morocco harvests high-elevation forests in the Middle and High Atlas to meet the majority of its timber needs. Its eucalyptus plantations allow it to produce its own charcoal, which is widely utilized as cooking fuel. Eucalyptus also supplies the country's paper and cellulose industries with raw materials. Cork from the country's abundant cork oak woodlands is also a major export. Sardines, bonito, and tuna are abundant in the Canary Current off Morocco's west coast, but the country lacks the modern fleets and processing facilities to properly exploit these marine riches. Morocco and the European Union signed a large trade agreement in 1996 that included fishing rights, under which the EU pays Morocco an annual fee to allow vessels to fish in Moroccan seas. With the conquest of Western Sahara, Morocco gained control of around two-thirds of the world's phosphate reserves, which are used to make fertilizers and other products. Low world phosphate prices, on the other hand, have hampered production. Phosphate is used in the creation of fertilizers, and a recent discovery has shown that Morocco possesses over 70% of the world's phosphate. In fact, within the next decades, the world's food supply could become reliant upon whoever Morocco chooses to trade with or who they choose not to trade with. Just maybe Morocco might just sell off the phosphate to the highest bidder. This has made many countries like the USA, Europe, and China want to trade with Morocco in a way that will favor them and Morocco. All this drives a lot of money into Morocco. Other minerals extracted for domestic use include iron ore and coal, as well as barite, manganese, lead, and zinc, which are exported in modest quantities. Morocco's lack of local energy sources is a fundamental flaw in its resource inventory. Although the country has considerable natural gas reserves that have been tapped, oil exploration has proved unsuccessful. It has significant hydroelectric potential, which is currently being exploited. Morocco must import the majority of its expanding energy demands, primarily crude petroleum that is refined domestically. Much of the country's electricity is generated by thermal power plants. Manufacturing accounts for roughly 1/6 of the GDP of this country and is constantly increasing in importance. Processing raw materials for export and making consumer items for the home market are two particularly important aspects of the country's industrial structure. Many of the enterprises trace back to the colonial era. Government engagement was prominent until the early 1980s, and the main focus was on import substitution. Since then, the focus has switched to privatization of government functions and encouraging new private investment, especially from outside the country. A major economic activity is the conversion of phosphate ore into fertilizers and phosphoric acid for export. Food processing for export includes canning fish, fresh vegetables and fruit, as well as flour milling and sugar refining for domestic purposes, and textile and clothing manufacturing utilizing domestically produced cotton and wool is a substantial source of foreign cash. Morocco's iron and steel sector is minor, yet it meets a large portion of the country's domestic demands. The Bank Al Maghrib, Morocco's central bank, is a major player in the country's banking sector. It issues the Moroccan dirham, manages Morocco's foreign currency reserves, regulates the commercial banking system, controls credit supply, supervises the government's specialized lending companies, and issues the Moroccan dirham. Privatization has boosted trading on the Casablanca Stock Exchange, particularly in shares of significant former state-owned enterprises. Government efforts to boost exports and regulate imports have seen some results, and the country's long-standing annual trade deficit has begun to shrink. Morocco has also greatly reduced its foreign debt by the 1990s. Agricultural produce such as citrus fruits and market vegetables, semi-processed goods, and consumer goods such as textiles, phosphates, and phosphate products are the top 3 exports. Semi-manufacturers and industrial equipment, crude oil, and food commodities are all major imports. The European Union is Morocco's major trading partner. Given the purchasing power of the European Union, you definitely know money is coming into Morocco through exports. Because Morocco's trade with Europe is so essential, one of the most significant developments of the 1990s was the negotiation of a formal affiliation with the European Union, which included an agreement to establish a Euro-Mediterranean free trade zone over time. Various trade agreements have been explored to reduce reliance on Europe, including a deal with North American Free Trade Agreement countries and bilateral agreements with other Middle Eastern and North African countries. A free trade agreement with the United States was struck in 2004. Morocco's GDP is accounted for by services, which include government and military spending. Despite the government's continued efforts to sell many of its assets to private companies, government spending alone accounts for nearly half of the service economy. Since the mid-1990s, tourism and related services have grown in importance in the Moroccan economy, becoming the country's largest source of foreign currency by the late 1900s. During that time, the Moroccan government invested heavily in the growth of the tourist industry and related services through loans and tax exemptions. The government also made direct capital investments in the service sector's expansion, but it has been selling these properties since the early 1990s. Morocco has several million visitors each year, most of which are from Europe. Tourists from Algeria, the United States, and East Asia, primarily Japan, also visit. Agriculture employs roughly 1/3 of the population, mining, manufacturing, and construction employ another 1/3, and trade, finance, and service employ the other 1/3. A huge informal sector of street vendors, domestic workers, and other underemployed and low-paid individuals is not included in these calculations. Unemployment is a concern. The official figure is around 1/5 of the workforce, but unofficial estimates are substantially higher, and unemployment among university graduates with non-technical degrees is notably high, as it is in most Middle Eastern and North African countries. L'Union Marocaine du Travail, which is connected with the International Confederation of Free Trade Unions, is the country's largest trade union, with almost 700,000 members. The majority of the general budget comes from tax receipts. Individuals, corporations, commodities, and services, as well as tobacco and petroleum products, all pay taxes. Morocco's road network successfully connects the country's various regions. The network was established during the colonial period and has since been adequately maintained and continuously enlarged. The railway system connects the north's major cities, and new train connections, as well as better roadways, are being built to El Ain in western Sahara. Morocco has a total of 24 ports along its coastline. Casablanca alone handles roughly half of all port traffic, however. Tangiers port facilities are becoming increasingly important. Safi, Mohammedia, Agadir, Nador, Kenitra, and El Jorf Lasfar are among the other notable ports. The country is served by about a dozen airports, capable of housing large aircraft. The main international airport is near Casablanca. The state-owned Royal Air Maroc airline flies to Europe, North America, the Middle East, and Western Africa on a regular basis. All these well-maintained roads, good railway networks, and great air facilities facilitate the movement of people and businesses within and out of Morocco, and all these bring huge chunks of money into the country. The government expanded and modernized the telecommunications system significantly in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Internal phone lines were roughly tripled, and international communications were greatly improved. A new law permitted private participation in the retail sector, while the state retained control of fixed assets, allowing the state-owned telecommunications business to be privatized in 1996. Maroc Telecom was established by the government in 1998 to provide telephone, cell phone, and internet services throughout the country. Even the poorest neighborhoods have satellite dishes on their roofs, indicating that Moroccans of all social and economic levels have access to the global telecommunications network. Morocco has made significant progress with the internet. Big institutions have direct access, while private persons can connect through telecoms boutiques, which are similar to cyber cafes seen in many Western nations, and through personal computers. Morocco's economic growth is said to rise by 3% in 2022, according to the IMF. The country is looking sharper than ever when it comes to the foreign exchange market, and that is a trend that would definitely continue for many years to come. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and also don't forget to hit subscribe so you do not miss out on any of our future content. Thanks for watching, and see you in another one.